meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees for Monday, February 11th, 2019. Could we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Phyllis, can we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Clint Folsom.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mark Lasis.
Here.
Sandy Hammerly. Ken Lish.
Here.
Kevin Ryan. Here. Neil Shaw.
Here.
Laura Skwasinski.
Here.
Town Manager Matt Magley. Here. Town Attorney Kendra Carberry.
Here.
Town Clerk Phyllis Harden here.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes that board members would like to see to the agenda?
I'd like to pull item 3A and 3C.
Okay. Ken pulling 3A and 3C. Any other changes? Okay. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda as modified.
So moved.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lasis, second by Trustee Lish. All those in favor? Right, passes unanimous. All right, reports, questions, and issues. Who'd like to start? Neil?
Nothing to report.
All right. Mark?
Thanks. Good evening. On Monday, February 4th, I attended my first Rocky Flats Stewardship Council meeting with Trustee Lish, since taking over for Trustee Hansen and Pennington. A good chunk of the meeting dealt with just an overview of the site, different monitoring that's going on. But part of the meeting dealt with updates on mineral development underneath Rocky Flats. Senator Matt Jones, who's now Boulder County Commissioner, stated that COGCC was actually poised to approve the permits that were pending, filed by Highlands Natural Resources, which kind of came as a shock to a lot of people in the room. So with that in mind, and just to take the temperature of the board, we had a discussion about bringing a potential motion to the Stewardship Council, which would be a resolution opposing any and all oil and gas exploration and fracking underneath the Rocky Flats site. This motion would be intended to be a showing of solidarity amongst local governments, county and local governments, and I just wanted to make sure that there weren't any objections on the board here. The next meeting of the Stewardship Council is on April 1st, and Ken and I are going to work on that draft motion and then bring it before the council. So, any objections to that?
Sounds great.
Okay. And that's my report. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Mark. Kevin?
Evening, just a couple things. As a reminder, I notified the board and staff I'll be catching a plane later this evening, so I'm going to depart for the airport sometime between 10 and 10:30. So I don't want to ask anybody to abbreviate their comments either on this board or in the public, but at the same time that I ask that we not necessarily rush through to a vote, particularly as it relates to the application that we have before us tonight. So let's have a dialogue on our agenda topics for as long as it takes, but if it goes past, say 10:15, I'd ask that we continue those discussions until a date certain. And thank you for that. Number two, we had a really good traffic and safety meeting last week, Monday, February 3rd. The minutes will be published, so don't want to highlight everything, but do want to call a couple things to the board's attention. Number one, Matt and Alex suggested the services of a consultant, Carlos Hernandez, who is one of the principals of a boutique firm who's done business with both large and small towns and municipalities. For the time being, Carlos will be helping to set the agenda and facilitate TSCs, the traffic and safety committees. But I do want to call to the attention because he is not inexpensive. And the expectation for this year will be about $20,000 for him to help facilitate our meetings on a not to exceed basis. Arguably, he's already shown tremendous value because during the traffic and safety meeting, as by way of example, we got into a pretty detailed discussion around the need or desire for a flashing crosswalk beacon. And he coached us on how signage and a raised median can help with stop sign compliance, which is really what we're trying to get. This is especially important because we are recommending a new crosswalk near the bus stop on South Coal Creek, so you'll read about that in the minutes. And second, Alex and Carlos did remind us that we already have a neighborhood traffic calming program, which, while it has a pretty well-defined process, has been largely ignored. So while the process, in my experience, when a process is not being followed, it's usually a good time to consider revising that process. So I'd like to suggest we add that for board consideration during the next retreat topic, specifically whether or not we'd like to consider revising our defined process, and if so, how we might be able to do so. And Alex and Carlos recommended that would be a good opportunity to engage the community and maybe pilot some different programs. So, but generally it was a really good meeting, and happy to have our new 2 members of the Traffic and Safety Committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Laura?
So I also was at the Safety Committee meeting on last Monday night. I'd echo most of Trustee Ryan's comments around the value of the consultant, and would strongly encourage the rest of the board to consider the great value he brings. I also hosted, along with Trustee Sandy Hammerly, the First Friday on February 1st. Topics there included traffic safety due to the accident that morning at 88th Street Circle, which had a lot of the community in an uproar, airport noise, and development in town center. For residents, again, in the interest of time, I won't be reporting out on the emails that we've been receiving, but I do post those topics on my website along with the summary of this board meeting. So I hope you find that helpful in case you would like to pull any of those emails for your own reading. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Ken?
I'm sure this comment begins to sound like a broken record, but we had another snowstorm last week, and I just want to say great job to our plow services. Just phenomenal job. It's amazing how you just drive across the bridge and you see how different it is. Just great job keeping our community safe. It's much appreciated. I'd also like to commend, Sandy Hammerly, I'm sure was going to brief on it, but I'd like to commend town staff, specifically the Parks and Rec Department, for hosting the first ever advisory committee training. While I wasn't able to attend the training in person, I did watch the training online. It was clear the content was effectively and energetically delivered, and the committee members did a great job contributing to an engaging discussion. Hopefully this will go a long way in continuing to increase the level of effectiveness and efficiency of our committees. As far as meetings go, Trustee Lasis mentioned the February 4th Rocky Flats meeting that we attended, and then also the February 6th Boulder County Consortium of Cities meeting was canceled due to the snow. That's all I have to report.
All right, thanks, Ken. I want to echo Ken's comments about the committee training on Saturday the 2nd. Appreciate staff organizing that event and all of the dozens of volunteers that attended. Really appreciate the contributions of all of our committee and commission members over the years. Tomorrow I'm going to be attending a ribbon cutting at the Sports Stable for Superior Education. This is a new academic program that's going to complement many athletic programs that are already underway at the Sports Stable. And we always get a great turnout from chamber members who come to celebrate ribbon cuttings, and always welcome other board members to come to ribbon cuttings as well. As you know, we've got a wonderful full-time staff here at the town of Superior that keeps things running on a day-to-day basis, and I want to recognize 2 staff members who have work anniversaries this month that are over 10 years. Our town clerk, Phyllis Harden, is celebrating her 46th year with the town of Superior. So congratulations. And Martin Toth is Assistant Town Manager, celebrating his 13th year with the town here this year. There's also a couple of others. Alex is celebrating a work anniversary this month as well. So I've got all of those detailed on my mayor's Facebook page, along with some other details about meetings that I've attended in the past month. And we're going to be entering the public comment segment here next. And public comment is for consent agenda or non-agenda items. If you do have public comment on one of our future agenda items, ask that you please wait and deliver those comments at that time so that it can be included in the public record. But if time is constrained and you'd rather just deliver your comments now, certainly welcome to do so. Our town attorney does have another comment or two regarding public comment on the one of our agenda items.
Yeah, sort of just to follow up on that, if anyone has comments on the Thrive application, which is coming up later for a public hearing, please save those for that public hearing because that's the only way those comments will get entered into the record. That being said, just for the public record, the Thrive application does not implicate what we all call the buffer, otherwise known as Tract H. If anyone has comments on the buffer, they're really not relevant to tonight's public hearing. They should be saved. I understand some of them relate to the Toll Brothers forthcoming application. So those comments could be saved for that, but they're not relevant to the application that's pending this evening.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything from
Just a
Matt?
couple of things for the board. We'll have an executive session on the 25th because we're having dinner with CAPS, and it's going to be at the end of the meeting. So just FYI there. Our next Superior Louisville Joint Issues Committee is scheduled for the 19th in the morning. Agenda will be going out on that. Staff's meeting with Brixmor representatives on the 21st, so we'll give you an update on what occurs with that meeting. And then for trustees Ryan and Lish, had some conversations with the fire chief about first meeting with them, and I'll send out an email looking at the Monday, the 25th in the afternoon. So I'll send out an email and then we can go from there.
Thanks. And do we get the Superior Youth Leadership Council rescheduled?
I haven't heard yet. I will let you know as soon as we do.
Right now, they're looking at 2 dates. I think it's either the Thursday or Friday of next week, which I think is the 20th, 21st, 22nd. But it hasn't been set yet.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Kendra, anything?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
All right, thanks. And Phyllis? All right, very good. All right, next is our public comment section. If you'd like to make public comment, give me a little wave and you can come on up to the podium. Go ahead.
Every time. Good evening, trustees. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. My comments kind of segue from one agenda item. I'm Teresa Clark.
Just for the record, thank you.
We all don't know. I am Teresa Clark, and I'm a Superior resident. And my comments this evening kind of start with an agenda item, but then go to something else. So I think it's more appropriate that I give them now than opposed to at the agenda item. Because my general thought about the agenda item of Thrive is that it's great. I like their product. As long as they present something to us that complies with our height issues, our heights, and frankly, I'm sorry, but it just is attractive to look at. Let them in. They make a great product. I hope that some of their construction standards and architectural designs regarding sustainability become further requirements for the rest of the STC. So it's not a public comment on that, but I hope you've heard it. The reason I'm speaking to you tonight, though, is that now here we are in another time and place with new trustees and old trustees where we're entertaining yet another FDP on a PD amendment that inaccurately represents what was warranted to citizens within the annexation agreement of 1998. And the challenge with that is that boards keep allowing staff to present FDPs on top of those or overlaying those PD amendments where there's a road still depicted within the buffer, where the two ponds that are supposed to be within the buffer are now gone. And of course, I think it's been pretty clear that citizens want their 5.75 acres of the buffer back that was given away. So, sorry, I took notes here. Likewise, there's a concept that citizens who want their government to enforce ordinances Like there are ordinances for sound, there are ordinances for speed limits, there are ordinances for keeping your dog on a leash. And it is my opinion that no way can be construed that a citizen requiring their government to enforce an ordinance can be considered a third party beneficiary. So, given that citizens want their buffer back, they want the road taken out of the buffer, they want the ponds restored to their buffer, this is supposed to be a wildlife corridor open space. So there's two possible solutions. All it takes is for 4 of you to agree to restore the residential buffer to its original size, to remove the road depicted going through the PD amendments, to restore the ponds. All it takes is 4 of you. So that's one possible solution. And I'm hoping, because I've been standing here since 2013, hoping that this will be the case, that 4 of you will agree to that. Because the other solution is that citizens can seek an injunction until the legality of the giveaway of the 5.75 acres and the noncompliance of the annexation agreement is verified. I view one of those as what a respectful government does for its citizens and how citizens can respectfully bring requests to their government. The other one I kind of view as Chernobyl, and I don't want us to go there. So I thank you for listening to me this evening, and I appreciate you guys welcoming me back into the fold after the election period as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Additional public comment?
Mayor, TJ Sullivan is here. He's the new executive director for the chamber, so.
All right, welcome, TJ.
You took my thunder. I was going to do a big introduction. Yeah, that was... Good evening, trustees. Thank you for having me. My name is TJ Sullivan, and I'm very happy to introduce myself as the new executive director of your Superior Chamber of Commerce. It's only been a month since I took over the reins previously held by local legend Heather Craycraft. And although my 40-minute commute each way from East Denver is loads of fun, I am loving getting to know the area. Until a month ago, honestly, Superior and its surrounding communities were mostly a mystery to me. Now, thanks to the generosity of our chamber board, the town staff, which is amazing, and many of our chamber members, I'm figuring things out. Never thought 4 square miles could be so hard to learn. I am learning my Rock Creek from my Coal Creek, as it were. I've spent so much time in the sports stable, I'm about to invest in a locker, I think. I've learned that this is an amazing town full of optimistic entrepreneurial people who care about each other and care about the marvelous way of life that exists here in Superior. I am genuinely having a blast learning ways I can support the booming professional community in and around Superior. The biggest question I've been asked recently is, what is your vision for the chamber? And honestly, that's not my job. The chamber board and its members will determine its vision. It's my job to make that vision a reality. But while we're clarifying that, my plan is to build on the remarkable work of my predecessor, bring some new eyes and ideas to our events, engage and encourage our members to feel the power of community as much as possible, and surf this wave of economic development in Superior and the rest of Boulder County. People are investing here. That's pretty obvious. People want to see good things happen, and I'm thrilled that I can play a role in that. I want to encourage everyone in and around Superior to support the chamber in whatever way suits them. That might mean visiting our website at superiorchamber.com. It might mean supporting the member businesses investing in the health of Superior's professional community. It might mean coming out to some of our events or spending time at our members' booths at some of the town's events in the coming year. It might mean thinking of us when you start that business you've always dreamed of and letting us help you get that dream off the ground. It might just mean liking us on Instagram at Superior Colorado Chamber. Thank you for the opportunity to say hello to you this evening. I look forward to working with you. Please seek me out whenever I can be of assistance to the town. I look forward to working with everyone here, everyone watching at home, to solidify Superior's status as an amazing place to work, live, and thrive. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, TJ, and welcome to Superior. We look forward to working with you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, additional public comment? Any additional public comment? All right, we'll close public comment and go on to our presentation segment. We are very fortunate tonight to have both of our representatives from the state of Colorado here. We have State Senator Tammy Story and State Representative Matt Gray, both here to introduce themselves to those who they've not met, and we welcome you here to our Board of Trustees meeting. So why don't we go with Senator Story first? Just have you give a brief introduction on yourself and kind of maybe some highlights of the legislative session, and then we'll have a little bit of dialogue.
Sure.
Thank you
Sounds
and welcome.
great. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate the invitation to be here with all of you tonight. I'm Senator Tammy Story. I represent Senate District 16, which includes Superior and the southern end of Boulder County. It's all of Gilpin County, the mountains of Jeffco, and also a southwest corner of Denver County. I am serving as vice chair on the Education Committee. I'm also on Business, Labor, and Technology. I'm on the Capital Development Committee, and I'm also on the advisory committee to the Colorado Department on Higher Education. So things are busy down at the Capitol, and ramping up well. I have, well, I'll just share with you that my history is with public education. I've been a volunteer for over 20 years, primarily focused on Jeffco schools over that time. So that public education piece is definitely a passion of mine. So not surprisingly, quite a few of my bills are focused on that. But we have quite a few things that we're working on down at the Capitol, and I have kind of my fingers in several pies at the moment. But I'll just give you a brief rundown of the bills that I'm working on and where they are kind of in the pipeline. One of my first bills was one that was focused on district transportation for students, and it really is a cleanup bill from a bill that passed late in the 2018 session where an amendment was inserted, but perhaps should not have been. There was a court challenge, and it was found to be a violation of the single subject rule and was unconstitutional. So this bill was to just clean that bill up and pull that amendment out so that the bill would stand as it was originally intended. And it focused on transportation for foster care students. And in the event that a foster student would move out of the district where their home school was, that transportation would be worked out between where the student was living currently and where their home school was so that they could maintain that stability in their home school. Another bill is focused on providing employee information to students who are qualify for a federal loan forgiveness program. And it's my understanding that there are a lot of people that would qualify for this particular program, this loan forgiveness program, but only about 1% of them across the country are actually engaged in seeking this loan forgiveness. So this bill is to ensure that information about this loan forgiveness program gets into the hands of the state employees who would qualify for it. So it's state employees in Colorado, it would be public school, K-12 employees, it would be employees of, state institutions of higher education, military service, active military duty personnel, and nonprofits, people who work for nonprofits. So it's a pretty broad spectrum of individuals, and so that's what this bill will do, is get information into the hands of those people so that they can kind of look into that. I'm also working on a bill in regards to infant and family child care and putting together an action plan, because it's our understanding that there is a huge percentage of infant and family child care programs that have shut down. So the numbers are declining, and so there's fewer and fewer options for people across the state to find licensed childcare. And so then, of course, it makes it hard for people to work in jobs if they need childcare. And so we need a sort of a formal research piece to determine why this is happening so that we can then take action. And all three of those bills have passed through the Senate and are on their way to the House. I'm also working on an area technical college grant program to identify a path for capital grants for 3 area technical colleges because they really have no path for capital funding. They're not public institutions, they're not K-12 schools. Sometimes they're a mix of those, but they're kind of in their own little island. So trying to figure out how to get some capital funding to them because they don't really have a clear path right now. And I'm also working on a bill for regulations for online schools to kind of put all of them kind of on a level playing field, and they're all playing by the same rules. And those 2 bills that I just mentioned are yet to be heard in committee, but they will be this week or next week. And there's a few others, and there's certainly a handful of bills I know that are coming relative to environmental concerns, and certainly will be sort of in that pipeline with those bills, and looking forward to others that are, coming forward too, but aren't yet introduced. So that's kind of where I am. Would you have any questions for me at this point?
Great, thank you for the introduction.
So first off, congratulations on being elected.
Thank
you. First, I wanted to thank you, Senator Story. I don't know if everybody on the board or in the public is aware of this, but back in November, when the Highlands Natural Resources drilling applications were filed, as Senator-elect Story, she was already representing this community, getting on the phone with the CEO of Highlands Natural Resources. And she was here at Town Hall when we had our big emergency meeting, and she was really supporting us and helping protect the health, safety, and welfare of the town of Superior. So just thank you for doing that. That's exactly what we want in our elected representatives, is for them to represent the community, and that's what you were doing. So I just wanted to take a moment to publicly thank you for doing that. Secondly, and with regards to oil and gas, and this goes to Representative Gray as well, if you could, and maybe we'll talk about this after Representative Gray gives his introduction, but my understanding is that there's a lot of pending legislation that is soon to be introduced with respect to oil and gas, some of it touching on local control. If you could kind of touch on what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what you're anticipating is going to be introduced, and then to the extent that there's any need for municipal officials to testify at committee hearings in the future, I'll personally volunteer for that. I'm sure others on the board here would be happy to do that. So thank you again, and congratulations.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much for your kind words. I appreciate it. I'm honored to have the opportunity to represent Superior and the rest of my district. And yes, that was quite a surprise to dive into that effort in regards to Highlands just a few days after the election, before I had even been sworn in. But I'm glad it all worked out, and was, happy to, be of some assistance. So you're welcome. And relative to your other request about oil and gas legislation, let Matt have his say, and then we'll move forward with that questioning. Okay.
Thank you. Good. Welcome, Representative Matt Gray.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be back for now my 3rd time with you all, and it's one of my favorite nights of the year to give you an update. I'm excited to return. I'm going to be working on a few different things than I have before. I was named the chair of our Transportation and Local Government Committee of the House of Representatives, and so a lot of my work recently has been focusing on that. 2 issues which are obviously, as a local government, things that are going to affect the town of Superior significantly, but also transportation is a huge concern up in our area. And so I have been getting to work on a lot of things in that particular field. In and around transportation, one of our biggest questions has been around overall statewide funding, which has been woefully inadequate for the last several years, going back to when we stopped providing any inflation adjustments to the gas tax in 1992. And so we had a couple ballot initiatives, Propositions 109 and 110, that were not successful in the 2018 ballot, but we still have the needs, and there's still folks in our community who want those needs addressed. And so I am working with folks on the Joint Budget Committee and my counterparts in the Senate to try to figure out a new plan that will work in order to provide the transportation infrastructure that people want to see. With respect to oil and gas, it's another issue that's really important all the way across my district. There are legislative proposals that are being worked on. That's one of the ones that has made it all the way up to the, sort of the top pay grade of the entire Capitol. Right now, the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader and the Governor's office are all working together on a bill that would be, at least as envisioned right now, relatively large scale sort of reinvention and reform to how oil and gas is done in the state, pairing two sort of primary concepts. One is changing the mission of the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission to more prioritize health and safety in their deliberations. Right now there's language that's in the Oil and Gas Conservation Act about the job of the COGCC is to foster oil and gas development and puts a priority on making sure that as many minerals as possible are extracted, and to address that and have more of a fair balance to say that there could be situations where maximum extraction doesn't make sense and where health and safety should prevail, but also pairing that with increased local control and more chances for local governments to get involved in and have authority over siting, land use, and those sorts of powers that you all exercise on a regular basis with respect to a number of industries, but to bring that to the oil and gas area as well. I have not seen a draft of the legislation yet. Obviously, you know, as we saw in the last election, almost anything involving oil and gas regulation is probably going to be relatively controversial. It's going to be a big conversation to have, but it is definitely coming. And, you know, we've been sort of mildly briefed on it, but I expect probably within the next 2 weeks or so, we'll see a draft, you know, we'll see a bill that actually gets introduced and we start working and moving forward in that area. And then just a few other things I'm working on. Again, sort of same thing with Senator Story. The bills I'm working on sort of run the gamut. One of the other bigger lifts I'm working on is the idea of providing paid family leave for workers across the state of Colorado, which is a pretty big lift, as you might guess. That's a bill that's starting with some of my colleagues in the Senate, but I'll be working on that as well. And again, the way that we're considering it right now, it would be something that would apply to local governments in addition to the state government, in addition to businesses and to basically folks who work in all areas. And so as we move forward there, I'm happy to take your input and hear about how that would affect the benefits and, you know, the costs that would come to the town of Superior as far as implementing that sort of program. So again, I don't have a lot of details for you here tonight as well. That bill hasn't been introduced yet either, but it will be coming, and I look forward to working together with you and answer any questions you'd have.
Great, thank you very much. Let me, questions from the board?
I have just a question of kind of procedure logistics. You mentioned that there's this bill with respect to oil and gas that is currently being negotiated between the Majority Leader and the President of the Senate, I guess. Speaker of the House, yeah. From the time that the bill is introduced, when do the committee hearings occur? How long does that process typically take before the bills are actually going to be going forward to assuming that they get out of committee and going forward to the floor of the House, the floor of the Senate? Is it immediately after introduction? Does it go to committee? Is there a lag period? Does it depend on the complexity of the bill? If you can just give a little more background on how the sausage is actually made.
Sure. I mean, it depends both on the complexity of the bill and, frankly, how much time is left in the session and how quickly the process needs to move. I mean, technically, it is possible, and I voted for bills before that were introduced and passed by both chambers 3 days later. Technically, the fastest you can possibly pass a piece of legislation is in 3 days because of the variety of rules that we have. Now, that is exceedingly uncommon, and the only time we ever do it in 3 days is when there's only 3 days left, and that's how long it took to make a compromise. We've had to do that a couple times where that was the day you finally struck a compromise and you need to start with a new bill. And so that has happened before. That's exceedingly rare. But there's no, that's when you constrict it down, there's nothing that, I can't guarantee you on any given bill that there'll be more than 3 days that exist. Now, normally a bill gets introduced, it's at least a week or two before a committee hearing occurs. And then it becomes a sort of a procedural question as to whether or not it's assigned to one committee, it's assigned to multiple committees, and whether it needs to go through the Appropriations Committee, which is sort of an interesting duck of its own. But when we're spending money at the state level, most of the time that needs to go through the Appropriations Committee, which meets a lot. It's both a committee where the public is involved, there's no public testimony there, but it's a procedural step that can take a little while to get through. But generally speaking, if you want to make sure that you're involved, then I'm happy to keep you all, informed on something as big as oil and gas legislation. There's going to be time for folks to get involved, but it could be a week or so. It could be the bill gets introduced on Tuesday and it's going to be heard the following Wednesday or somewhere along those lines. If it is an issue that folks are interested in, then it is good to be paying attention on a pretty active basis because, there's no guarantee. You can introduce a bill in here at the same day. Again, that doesn't normally happen outside the very end of session. But it's worth, if you're trying to plan your schedule, you want to come down and testify, you want to be a participant, and you really care about an issue, staying on top of it on a day-to-day basis is a good idea because if you need to make plans to come down to Denver, it is possible to give remote testimony on bills, but most of the time we don't, and it's not available on all bills, and it's not available to a facility like this. And so if you're somebody in Superior who wants to come and have your say about a piece of legislation, generally speaking, you need to drive down to Denver to do it, and you may not have more than a week or so notice to know that that's going to occur. So it is a good thing to stay on top of, and you can work through my office or Senator Story's office as well to stay updated on those things.
And is the ability to testify on a bill open to any member of the public, or do they need to get prior approval to come forward to the committee and testify?
You don't need, no, it is available to the public. All you need to do is show up and sign in. It is up to the committee chair how testimony is going to be heard. So there can be time limits on how much testimony you have. And in some extraordinary cases, there can be a limit on the total amount of time the testimony is going to come in. So you could come down there, everybody can sign up, but you could sign up and not be heard because time is exhausted. But we try to avoid that at all costs. For the most part, the committees that I'm a part of, we'd rather stay there till midnight and make sure every member of the public has a chance to give their say than do cut off that time and not give it to them. But that's within the purview of the chair of the individual committee. It's possible for that to happen, but we try to avoid that. We try to, any citizen who's engaged enough to come and give testimony, we try to give them a chance to.
Okay, thank you.
This may be a question for you, or this may be a question for Senator Story. I understand that while we can certainly go give testimony, that it would also be effective for us to lobby some of our other state senators around oil and gas. What would be the most effective way for those of us on this board to do that, to get in front of them and let them know how important this is?
Sure. I think that as many sort of face-to-face meetings you can have with legislators before a bill is in its hearing is as effective as possible, especially on something like oil and gas where it's going to be a really big decision. There's going to be a lot of information somebody's going to receive well before a hearing happens. You're more likely to catch a senator or a representative before they've made up their mind, before the gavel falls on the hearing than after. It's not to say nobody changes their mind during hearings, they do, but especially on really big issues, they're going to hear about it ahead of time. That is going to be hard on oil and gas because there's going to be a lot of folks who want to go and meet with interested senators and representatives, but it's always worth doing. And what I tell, everyone, and what I would tell you as well, is the most valuable information you can convey to legislators is the part of your story that makes you unique from everyone else. Especially coming off the last election, there's a lot of political messaging in and around, on all sides, in and around oil and gas development, its benefits, its costs, and what should happen with it. Having another person, especially when you're talking to somebody who you're not their constituent, they don't represent you. 100% of your folks who actually represent the town are here tonight, but when you're talking to other folks, telling them the same thing that they've heard from a lot of other sources is not always as effective because they sort of heard that and internalized that before. But for a place like the town of Superior, telling the story, part of your story that's unique to the town of Superior, I think can be very useful. And especially when it comes to, the proposed drilling that was put up around here, having the, the experience of living near Rocky Flats and the idea of development in that area, that's something that, even my residents in Broomfield who are, it's been several years now of dealing, being really concerned about these issues. They can't tell that same part of the story. And so as much as you can provide, especially to somebody who doesn't individually represent you, as much as you can tell them a unique part of the town of Superior story with respect to oil and gas drilling or frankly any other issue, that's when it can be the most effective, because that's when you're giving them information that they didn't have already. It's not here's a political slogan, here's just sort of my general thoughts that could be from somebody from Colorado or for somebody from New York or you name it. But here's a unique part of my community that I represent that, let me tell you our story, is the stuff that's, I think, most effective in communicating with legislators, because you're giving them the information they couldn't really get from anywhere else.
Ken.
So again, thank you both for coming this evening. It's really appreciated. To follow up, just to make sure we didn't miss anything or anything fell through the cracks, beyond what's been discussed about giving testimony and reaching out to some of the other representatives and senators, is there anything else that we as a town or we as municipal elected officials could be doing to help sway the position on oil and gas one way or the other as it comes up for future debate?
I mean, I think that one of the options that you have is, once legislation actually gets introduced and you have a chance to review it, you have the ability to sort of adopt a resolution in favor or against a particular piece of legislation, and you could take a look at that sort of thing. You can go down and make contact. I mean, frankly, especially when it comes to oil and gas, there's a lot of cooks in that kitchen. There are a lot of folks who have really strong opinions. And so there's not one thing you can do where the town of Superior is going to be able to single-handedly sway that debate one way or another. It's just, it's too big of a thing. But also the key decision makers on policies like that get a lot of attention, for almost none of them is there going to be one voice that they hear that changes their mind one way or another. But they're also going to hear from hundreds, if not thousands, of voices. And the aggregate of all that does become important. When you have the total, the total amount of input that you receive, in bills where almost all the input you receive is negative and almost none of it is positive, even if it's an idea that the bill that you might generally agree with, it causes you as a legislator to think, oh, well, wait a minute, maybe I should be asking more questions. The same sort of thing. If it's an idea that I might generally instinctively say, well, that doesn't sound like a great idea to me, and then all the feedback that comes from, business community, local governments, community groups, et cetera, is all positive, then I might give it another thought there. And so sometimes, there's some issues that are narrow enough where just the town of Superior could sway a ton of votes because it's something that's unique to your community. When it comes to oil and gas development, the number of voices is going to be huge. There's not a way for you to single-handedly change it, but it is also important to use your voice and to weigh in there, because there's going to be some huge decisions by decision makers, and they're going to take into account everything that they see and everything that they hear. And so you can have, you can't have a controlling impact on the outcome. You can have a marginal effect on the income, on the outcome, and the final outcome is going to be based on, okay, where do you get the most marginal input from, and who gives the best information to those lawmakers who are going to make the final decisions.
All right.
And I might also add there's strength in numbers. So, a municipality here in Superior and the leadership in other municipalities, if you can get a collective, letter or letters going in together from multiple cities in Boulder, or even, in the outlying areas, whether they're in Boulder County or not. There's a multitude of mayors and trustee boards, or, however their city is, leadership is set up. That may be a good thing too.
Good suggestion. Thank you.
Thanks to
All
you
right.
both.
Thanks again to both of you for taking the time out of your schedules to be here tonight. We appreciate all that you do for our town. So thank you very much.
One last question. It's my understanding that at least there's a contemplated town hall that's going to be happening at Town Hall here in Superior at some point in the near future. When is that?
You have that on your calendar.
Please hold.
I think it's,
March 9th,
yes,
Yes,
I think it is.
March 9th
Mm-hmm.
at
Yep.
9:30?
March 9th I have 10.
10?
I think here?
Yes, it is here.
Yes.
Is that the time you have?
I have 9:30, but.
It could be 9:30. I don't.
Okay.
We'll
don't trust my
confirm.
calendar, but yes.
We will confirm.
Saturday morning, we'll be here.
Both of you?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. Thanks for letting us be here.
Thanks again. All right, we are now on to our consent agenda. We have item 3B. We have 3A and C have been pulled, so we'll do 3B. Do I have a motion to approve 3B? Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lasis, second by Trustee Ryan. All those in favor? Okay, that passes unanimous. All right, 3A, approval of minutes. Ken?
Yeah, so I pulled that, just wanted to add on the first page, the first or the last paragraph. I just wanted to note that we also pulled item 7F. We didn't have that listed in there, so just wanted to make sure that we had that noted. So I'll move to approve the minutes with that adjustment.
Okay. All right, motion by Trustee Lish, second by Mayor Pro Tem Lasis. All those in favor? All right, that passes unanimous. And then, Ken, you also pulled 3C, adoption of resolutions approving hourly general service agreements for on-call and emergency repair services with Superior Maintenance, Brandon Sand and Gravel, and Naranjo Civil Constructor, Straight Line Saw Cutting, and C&I Water Solutions.
Yeah, so I just had a quick question for Matt and Alex. So when reviewing the agreements provided, there were kind of two things that really jumped out at me. One, there's an overlap within the scope of duties for some of these firms as defined in Appendix A of each of the agreements. And then also, the rates can vary, and more specifically, the mobilization rates can vary fairly significantly from firm to firm. I was wondering if you could give a quick description of when there is overlapping qualifications, how do you determine which firm to use? What's your approach when we actually use?
Alex Aronello, Director of Public Works. A couple things that they're kind of vague in some of the services, and we looked at, a broad range of services that are out there. We wanted to get familiar with the different contractors, what their equipment that they had on staff, the capabilities of staff, and so forth. In terms of mobilization, a lot of it depends on the specialized equipment that they have to, bring to the town. For example, if you have a paving operation or a pothole operation, they bring a lot of specialized equipment that they have to put on low buoys and so forth. So, in that case, that the mobilization charge is much higher. We have a local contractor that's right here, and they're not very far, so they have very low mobilization costs. So it depends on the specialized equipment that they have to bring into town.
So, and to that point, when you're determining in that instance who to call, does the economics of it weigh in, or do you have a rotating policy, or how do you determine who to call?
We use, local contractors is probably the one, because we know they're here and they know our capabilities. So we try to use them as much as possible. We wanted to provide a little broader range this year because there are some specialized services that we want to look at. And so when we have a particular project, if we know a contractor can do it and they've done it well in the past and we know what their costs are, that kind of sways us. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is whether it's emergency work or that we can plan and get a couple of prices. We want to have a couple contractors that can provide similar services. So if there is a question, we have some time to plan a project. We can get multiple estimates for a particular work.
Okay.
Yeah, I would echo what Alex said. As far as there's some instances where time is of the essence, like in a water break, and we have residence service that's impacted, and we need to get those repairs done as in a timely manner. And usually the breaks occur at 2 o'clock in the morning for whatever reason. So in an instance like that, it's more of time than anything.
Okay. Well, I appreciate hearing that we utilize our local companies as much as possible, especially because it seems they give us really good rates comparatively. That's all I had.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion if you'd like to go ahead and make that motion to approve
Can I-
3C.
Can I still approve 3C in its entirety as written?
Yes.
Okay, I move so.
Okay, motion by trustee Lish to approve 3C, second by Mayor Pro Tem Lasis, and we'll need a roll call vote on this item.
Lish,
Aye.
Lasis,
Yes.
Folsom,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw.
Yes.
I'm sorry, yes, thank you. Kudinski, thank you.
All right, motion passes. Thank you very much. All right, we're on now to item number 4, which is public hearing and adoption of a resolution approving a lot line adjustment for Lot 3A and Tract B of Superior Town Center, filing number 1B, replat number 3, and associated easement vacation and easement dedication. And I'll gavel to open the public hearing. Do we have proof of publication?
Yes, we do.
Proof is confirmed. All right, go ahead with
We'll have a staff presentation
Staff
on this
presentation.
one, and then follow it with questions and discussion of the board.
all right, thanks.
Good evening, Stephen Williams, town staff. Tonight's development application for Agenda 4 involves a boundary line adjustment, an easement dedication, and an easement vacation, all of which are captured on the proposed plat shown here. Both the town and Glacier House Hotels are listed as applicants on this proposal. The town owns Tract B, and Glacier House owns Lot 3A, where Element Hotel is currently being constructed. The lot adjustment is requested in order to transfer roughly 3,000 square feet of land from Lot 3A to Tract B. This vicinity map generally illustrates where the adjustment is proposed, which is along the southeastern boundary of Lot 3A. The adjustment lies just northeast of Marshall Road and north of Coal Creek. This enlarged view of the current plat helps clarify the current lot configuration relative to what is proposed. Lot 3A is shown in red. The town's Park 2 parcel is on Tract B, which is shown in green, and the darkened area there in between generally reflects the 3,000 square feet of land that would be transferred between the 2 lots. This illustration was included in the narrative that went with this proposal. It helps clarify the 3 components that are proposed. The current lot line is highlighted in yellow. The proposed lot line is shown in red, and the area in between was originally planned for a stormwater detention facility as part of the FDP associated with the Element Hotel. That detention facility was originally designed to accommodate just flows from Lot 3A for the hotel, but Glacier has agreed to expand the pond in order to serve a broader regional detention need, which the town identified. So the one request that Glacier had was, instead of granting the town an access easement to maintain a public facility on their portion of the property, they wanted to dedicate the land to the town instead. Oh, sorry. So the other components here are an access easement. So that's the easement that's being dedicated. There's already an access easement through their parking area, and the town would just use this 18 feet rather than access it from Marshall Road in order to maintain this facility in the future. And then this was a utility easement for the outfall to allow the flows from Lot 3A to cross Tract B and get to Coal Creek. Because this is all on Tract B now, that outflow is no longer necessary as an easement. It's all on one property. So both Planning Commission and staff are recommending approval of this replat as proposed. No conditions were applied. Staff's memo also clarified the various review criteria and processes involved in this proposal. I'd be happy to answer any questions on that if desired. Otherwise, this concludes my presentation. And we do have somebody on behalf of Glacier Hotels here to represent them as well, if there's any questions for that portion of the applicant.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Are there any questions for Stephen?
I have a couple questions. Stephen, thank you. First question, will this have any effect on the currently planned Parks 1 and 2?
So I did follow up with Ian from Matrix, and he was able to clarify that it won't have much of an effect at all. This area wasn't planned for anything, so there is a minor adjustment. There used to be a looping sidewalk connection that would get you from Marshall Road down to the Coal Creek Trail, and that'll just need to be moved slightly to the west, but that connection still exists, and there's some grading impacts and a little bit of landscaping impacts, but this was not a programmed area, so it'll have virtually no impact on the park.
Okay. And what is the difference in cost between us joining in on this stormwater detention pond versus us building our own?
I don't know that offhand. I don't know if Alex is still here and might be able to address that, but I don't know cost-wise.
I mean, do we think we're saving money, or is this costing money?
Well, we're saving money and we're saving the area. So instead of having to do a redundant pond in a general vicinity, we're doing it in one location and minimizing the impacts. So
instead of building two separate ponds, we're joining in on one and capturing all of it there.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a follow-up question on that. So just to follow on, we are in essence taking on responsibility for this pond in perpetuity, whereas previously this one pond would have just been Glacier House's responsibility, right?
Correct.
So therefore, probably, in my understanding, would have also been their financial burden to maintain the pond as well?
We do, and we take on financial responsibility to maintain ponds when they're public in general. We did the same thing for the Discovery Office or the Discovery Residential Development, because that pond, which serves the residential development, was also serving a more regional need. So it's a common practice. It's not unusual.
So we're not actually assuming or inheriting any other financial liability by moving forward with this?
No, because we were gonna have a pond anyways. So.
I don't know that there's much in the way of, I don't think ponds require that frequent of maintenance. I think it's every few years, not every year or several times a year either, so.
Okay, any further questions from the board? Okay. Does Glacier House have anything else they'd like to present?
Jim's saying no.
No?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is there anything further before I open it up for public comment on this item? Okay. Anyone in the public like to make any public comments on this agenda item? All right, seeing none. Anything further before I close the public hearing? All right, public hearing is closed. Deliberation? Discussion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move to approve resolution number R-10, resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a lot line adjustment, replat, an easement vacation, and dedication for Lot 3A, Block 1, and Tract B, Part 2, Superior Town Center, number FP-2019-01.
Okay, motion by Trustee Lish, second by Mayor Pro Tem Laces. All those in favor? That passes unanimous. So, all right, that's completed. All right, next we're on to item number 5, public hearing and adoption of a resolution approving a subdivision plat for blocks 26 and 27 of downtown Superior, a final development plan for the northwest portion of block 26 and an associated subdivision improvement agreement including vested property rights. I will gavel to open the public hearing. Public hearing is now open. We have proof of publication.
Yes, I do.
Okay, proof of publication is confirmed. All right. Have a presentation from Thrive to begin.
We'll start off with a presentation from the applicant, then follow up with and then we have the 3D model that we're going to show, and then we'll have questions from the board.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Good evening, Jay Garcia, Thrive Home Builders. I know most of you either from previous board presentations or from the concept review hearing that we had back in November. Excuse me. So we are here tonight to present before you. We've been working on this particular block for going on 2 years now. And we're very excited and proud of what we're bringing to the board this evening. We've worked very hard. We've heard what has been provided to us by way of feedback. And so we'll just get right into it. I won't go into this in too much depth. This is something that we've covered before, but again, I think it warrants iterating that, this is really cool. It's a good sign that we are a good match with the town of Superior. Just the fact that you have your goals for green building and sustainability out there on your website. You have these programs that are offered for your homeowners and home buyers. And, we really feel that we align well with that. It's obviously a goal of the town board to support environmental sustainability. And that's just part of our mantra of who we are as a company. And so we see this as being a really, really good fit. And I know that I've kind of presented on this before, but I thought it might be a good opportunity to present what we call our one-page business plan. This is what Thrive uses as sort of the smartest person in the room, where it has everything that, we really stand for, what our purpose, what our mission, what our goals are, and even our mantra that I mentioned before. So I won't take too much time on this, but I think it kind of helps everyone here understand, where we come from as a company, sort of unified with our purpose to set a new standard for how home improves life and be a force for good for our customers, our associates, and our community. And our strategy for that is to be a builder of choice among our customers, trades, associate partners, developers, and cities or towns. And, I think it's important to understand that our mantra is to always do the right thing. And again, I think that all that fits very well within the town of Superior and what they stand for. So with that being said, I know I've shown this slide before in past presentations. It's a busy slide. It represents a lot of the awards that we have been granted, and we feel very lucky and blessed to have these. But it really is not presented here today to, brag or try to boast about how amazing we are. But it's just more to show and represent that we value the third-party recognition that we receive. And it's not just the local chapters of the HBA. It's the national the National Association of Home Builders. It's the U.S. Green Building Council. It's the EPA and the Department of Energy. And, we take great pride in the fact that we win these awards, and it kind of feeds into who we are as a company, what we value, and, the fact that we really intend to help preserve the value of life for Coloradans and around the metro area. And for those reasons, because we value healthy homes, energy efficient and innovative homes, and that we are local, we feel that we are a good fit for the community. So without belaboring that point anymore, I just wanted to kind of go into why we think we are a good fit for this particular community. Obviously the energy efficiency that we bring to the table, I can discuss that in more detail if people have questions about it. But, the way we go about that with our sustainable power and energy, our healthy homes that actually improve the livelihood of their occupants, and how we go through that. Just building on our decades of experience from the science of building. We value sustainability, obviously, within the community, which is why we feel we're a good fit with the town of Superior. We believe that we bring and offer high design within the community. And as part of the overall sort of urban design of the area, we also value the walkability and the connectivity within the community as a whole. So this slide kind of gives you some context. It shows in larger, bold lettering where Block 26 is oriented. Block 25 was previously approved by the board for Remington Homes back in January, and that's kind of to the north and northwest of this. And then the remainder of Block 26, which is just kind of the blank area that's slightly highlighted below Block 26 there. And then Block 27 to the south is something that's forthcoming before the board in the coming months. And then Block 14 is the next phase of what we would kind of transition to as part of the next phase of the project. So with that being said, that kind of gives you a little bit of context. I think it makes sense now to maybe present the the video for everyone to view and gain additional context with it.
So we do have the model here, if you guys want to dive into any specific part of that, but I think the idea would be to let Jay finish the presentation. And if you guys want any specific advantages, we can get into that afterwards.
Maybe Stephen, since why have it up? There's usually a version of this that has the view corridor. Do you have that?
Yeah, they can toggle that on and off once we get into that. It's not in the video, but it is on the 3D model. So
Okay,
you want to see that now?
No, that's all right.
Okay.
If it's not in the video, I'll wait for the.
It's not in the video, but we do have it, and we can toggle it on. So.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay. So that did kind of provide with some context. We kind of flew in from this direction, came down through Block 25, and then back down Discovery Parkway. It also took us around the backs of the homes just to kind of give an idea of the massing. Obviously, the colors and materials have not been applied, but I have that in this presentation. So this is just the second sheet of the plat. This was included in the packet and the material that was provided to the board. It's mostly provided for reference just to kind of show the northern portion of Block 26 is what's being presented tonight. This is the site data table that was part of the FDP, the final development plan, included in the packet. Parking, I just put this up here just to, again, represent what we are proposing for parking. The space is required with 19 residential units would be 31 with the 2 guest spaces. It's 10% of all the units require a guest space, so we round up to get 31. And with the 2 garage parking spaces, we meet all of the parking requirements. And then instead of just the 2 internal block of visitor spaces, we're offering 6. So we exceed the total parking by 13. This is an exhibit that just kind of represents the vehicular circulation around the site. The arrows indicate the direction of vehicular travel. I thought it was important to include in this presentation. This is an exhibit that focuses on the actual utilities as they relate to these homes. So you can see that the quote-unquote wet utilities are out in Discovery Parkway, which these homes front onto. The dark blue represents the water. The light blue represents the storm sewer. And then that sort of lighter orange color is the sanitary sewer. And so that's where the main is located. So all of the services feed into the street, with the exception of the dry utilities, which are represented in red, which come through Incline Lane, which is the alley to the rear. This is an exhibit that shows the landscape plan, and I'll toggle on the outlot landscaping. So you can see that we tried to kind of cluster the buildings together to provide more space for the actual landscaping itself. And we intentionally left the sort of larger space down at the southeast corner of the site to serve as sort of a landscape buffer to the view corridors from the south. And then also in the center of the block provide sort of a pedestrian connection through where those 4 visitor spaces are provided out to the fronts of these lots, but also to the community as a whole. And then these also serve as not just landscaping, but areas for snow storage as well. So this is kind of the color rendering of that same plan that shows our buildings highlighted in lighter yellow. As far as site design is concerned, we really appreciate, again, the overall community and how the interconnected streets really tie into these pedestrian scale blocks. That fits well with where we would want to be and what we think our buyers and owners will value as far as healthy communities are concerned. Also tying into that is the connections and interconnectivity to trails and bike paths. And then, really putting the pedestrian first with these enhanced crossings that facilitate community access to the local amenities, including the parks. And then a pattern that will encourage walking, biking, and alternative modes of transportation. Again, all of these fit right within our mantra and one of our legs of the stool, so to speak, with healthy environment, but also the sustainability of this community as well. So this is just an exhibit that shows Block 26 as it's oriented within the overall development. This is the actual sort of trail and walkway map that is included in the PD amendment. Again, we have these, sort of enhanced aspects of how the site plan will promote activity and get people out of their houses using alternative modes of transportation. The site design itself and the product mix includes all 2-story townhomes. These are all less than the height restriction of 32 feet. And the architecture, we feel, again, back to what we said, where we heard what the board had offered by way of feedback. We feel that this is really dialed into the architectural style that the board has requested. And we're excited about it. We think that it looks good and the color scheme is nice, and it's going to tie into the surrounding architecture. And really with the existing topography on the site, it offers an opportunity to kind of transition into the site itself and also into the core of the area. So this architecture here along Block 26, which is kind of in the emboldened color scheme, will transition into the 2-story architecture that we will be proposing on Block 14. So here are just some example images that kind of give you an idea of the massing, the articulation, the way that we've really intentionally provided these sort of pedestrian scale and appropriately scaled entrances with the covered roofs over each individual entryway. They're recessed entryways, but they all have their own individual porch. They're delineated by walls in between units, and they also kind of tie in cohesively with the overall massing of the building as well. Here are just some 3-dimensional perspectives that give you an idea of this specific block. We really took the topography, the existing grade change as an opportunity to integrate landscaping into the design and really provide sort of a buffer between the homes, but also offer sort of this individuality with the entryways into those units with their own staircases. As far as the product mix goes, again, these are all 2-story townhomes, less than 32 feet, and they will again tie into that architecture that we're proposing kind of down the hill across the street on Block 14. This is in compliance with the height requirement, as I mentioned before, and also within the building mass of 1 to 3 stories. And they are all oriented between 20 feet and 60 feet below the view shed that's measured from the adjacent property to the south. So here's an example of that view shed. This is one of the many sections that we've evaluated throughout the site, and it shows, grab the pointer here. It shows this building here as representative of what would be these units on Block 26. So you can see kind of that dimension ranging again from approximately 20 feet below the view shed, and it just kind of gains as the gains dimension as it proceeds to the northeast there. This is the color elevations that were included in the packet. One aspect of what we heard from the Planning Commission is that they wanted to see the rear elevation broken up more with color. So we've actually integrated some of the color that we provided on the front elevation and wrap that around to the rear elevation. What we're showing here is the exposed and enhanced side elevation. You can see that we're bringing some of the material and color from the front elevation around to the side in the upper gable of that second floor. And we've also, it's hard to see here, but we've got a shed roof over one of those windows there that really reads well in 3 dimensions. This is the color scheme. I actually brought a hard copy of the colors and materials board here this evening. If anybody would care to see that in its actual texture and material. And then these are just a couple of more images that give you an idea of how the interior of these homes lay out, as well as how they are oriented on the exterior of the home, kind of these exterior rooms that are created by these really well scaled and designed and integrated front porches. So this is the rendering that we provided within the packet and with the presentation that was offered ahead of time. We actually had our professional artist render up more of like a front view that I could offer to pass around to the board, just so that they can kind of see how this building on the southeast corner of the site will. So with that, I would like to say thank you once again. We're excited to be here. We appreciate all the hard work that's gone into the project and all the help that we received from staff. And we look forward to being a part of the community. So thank you.
I have a question. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you.
Actually, let me hold this here. Thanks. The rendering on, help me the difference on the rendering on 29 versus 31. So go back a page.
Okay.
No, forward a page, I suppose. No, forward. No, back one. There you go.
Oh,
I don't know why mine, Matt, am I looking at something different than what's?
So these are all actual photos, Trustee
Okay.
Ryan.
So this is the landscaping on this looks, I recognize this is a photo, not a rendering.
Right.
But even when you look at the railings, for example, you only have railings on one side. When you look at the picture on the lower right, it looks like somebody, that's just not anywhere near as aesthetically appealing as the rendering photo.
Gotcha.
So there you have railings on both sides.
Right.
You've got, and I recognize it's a rendering, so the plants are going to look a little more mature, the trees are going to look more mature, but you can, if I went through and counted the plants, I mean, even looking at the railings, on the steps. There's 2 railings as opposed to the photo where there's 1.
Right, so those were just example images of homes that we built in the past. This is more representative of what we would actually be proposing to build.
Okay.
Both in
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Can you go to the view shed corridor slide, which is on 26? So and maybe there's a 3D model that will show this, but that view shed looks like it's going off to the northeast. I'm more interested in the view shed that starts a little bit east of where that starts and goes to the northwest. I'd like to see how close that gets. I mean, that's pretty close there. That's, 30 to 40 feet. Okay, that's a lot, but do you have different?
I do. I have a hard copy that you can see here on the screen. This section here. I have this section here and then also this section here. If you're looking for more this section here, I think that's something we would have to pull up in the model for. But I have the hard copy exhibit.
Yeah, I'd kind of like to see them all, but so what is, so the max, so you have the headroom on that view shed corridor there is between 30 and 40 feet, right?
Right, correct.
What is when you looked at different representations, what's the minimum headroom between the view shed and, did you find anything less than 30 or 40 feet? And if so, how low did it get?
I'd have to go back and look, but the site to the south kind of slopes down here, but it also gets much further away in dimension. And so as you measure it, it's measured 10 feet up from the adjacent property line and then an incline of 4% from there. So the view shed actually ends up being about in this location, kind of no matter where you transition along that property line.
So nothing, you don't think anything, because the distance, you don't think there's anything inside of 30 to 40 feet within the view shed?
20 to 30, 40. I mean, I just don't have the exact math in front of me. But it's well below. There's nothing even close, which I think is a good sign that it was well planned, because you could see from the rendering just kind of the change in topography from these 2-story buildings up to the 3- and 4-story buildings on Block 25. It's kind of a smooth transition, and it's just a slight step up from there.
Okay. I'd also like to see the model from the 2nd story of that and whether or not they're looking directly into, and we don't need to see it the second, but once, I'm sure the flyby model, the 2nd story on the proposed development and what is directly across the street. What is that view directly across the street? Okay.
Yeah, actually, I had a very similar comment as Trustee Ryan for the flyby, especially as you toggle to the 4-story Remingtons on Block 26. What does that look like from, I think, Thrive Unit 1 through, 13 or 1 through 12? If we can see that as you look across. And, the cutaway that you have right there obviously is, Thrive to Thrive. If we can get another view of sort of Thrive to Remington in terms of what that looks like over the shed, because, obviously there's plenty of headroom over the Thrive property when you've got the 4 stories across the street. The grade obviously works to your advantage, and it's still well below the shed, but it's just want to get perspective on that. And my other question, and it looks like the Planning Commission had the same question because a lot of the drawings in the memo pertain to Unit 19 in the egress, because Unit 19 is basically on a peninsula. And from what I can see, you guys did a great job of trying to maximize squeezing these units all into that space. And that, the last, I think, units 15 through 19, you scooched them forward, it's like 0.04 acres larger to give them a slightly bigger driveway. But you walk me through the thinking with respect to the Planning Commission conversation in terms of the egress and the mobility for that unit, because it does really look like it's on an odd corner.
Let me get to the site plan. So you're referring to this unit right here?
Yeah.
You're exactly right. What we did with this is we pulled it forward to give it additional driveway distance and length. And then both existing homes that we built in the past were in similar configurations where there was kind of that turning movement. And then also just the science behind it. We conducted the auto turn analysis software where we used large vehicles pulling into both bays and just kind of showed how they would access that from either direction. Okay. It's similar to how we would show how a garbage truck would circulate through a community or a fire truck specifically.
Okay. No, I think it's, I mean, you did what you could with the sort of geography of the corner. It looks good.
Thank you.
First, thanks for coming back. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And you mentioned in there that, I can't remember the adjective you used, but I think you said you were trying to make these reflect what you've heard from board in the past. You can see that. The first question I have is it was highlighted in reference to planning sheet number 8 in staff's memo. That Thrive would prefer not to have solar panels be required as part of the FDP, as it is dependent on a contract with their provider. Can you explain a bit more what that means?
Sure. No, that's a very good question, actually. We plan to utilize solar in this community. We plan to offer it for each and every single home buyer and every unit on this plan. We just didn't want it included in the zoning document so that, you know, if our solar provider goes out of business tomorrow, we're left scrambling and then it's required and we wouldn't be compliant with the actual physical zoning document. We did provide in the narrative an actual layout of how we plan to install the solar. It will match the roof material and it will not exceed the height limit. It will actually be offset from the highest point of the roof. But every intention is to offer solar in this community.
Now, just to clarify, it was my understanding it's not to offer, but it will be not, this is an add-on or this, you can add this, but it will be on
Included. Yes, correct.
Okay. Sure.
The video that we saw of the heights, is that including the solar panels?
Yes. So let me see if I can. Well, essentially on the roof plan, you have a required offset. This is not going to, well, let me show on the rear because all of these rear elevations are actually what orient towards the south. Where is that? Here we go. So the solar panels will be oriented on the rear of the homes, and per fire code, you are required to keep clearance away from the actual highest point of the pitch. So that means that it will be required to be kind of set down. So it will not add height. Yeah.
Additional questions. So I appreciate you bringing the actual hard copy of the rendering. It actually did address one of my concerns. I was concerned about the best beige color, but you can actually, no, sorry. I was concerned about the vertical siding, and in this version looks much better and clearer than what we are seeing up on the projector. But I do have a remaining concern that you mentioned Block 25 having been recently approved and being adjacent to this lot. Is there any concern with there being such a drastic kind of difference in the way the exteriors look? I mean, on the homes on lot 25, there's stone, there's brick, there's one just horizontal siding. Is there any concern, and I suppose this goes to RC Superior as well, with how different we're seeing these two products that are right next to each other?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that, and good evening. Great to see you all, Mayor and Trustees. Bill Jenks, RC Superior. So from our standpoint, it's actually wildly important that we have variety between the different buildings, and that the different builders and different building types and different building styles add to the community and create a variety that we want to see in an urban setting. So it's actually, important. This has more of that sort of contemporary farmhouse aesthetic with the gable roof and the nice large windows with that shed, and then the Remington has a separate look that you've seen in the last couple of months. So I think they're complementary, and they provide access to buyers with different aesthetic preferences.
Okay. And then what I was referencing earlier with the colors is I appreciate you bringing the model because that looks much better with the beige than what we were seeing on here. So
good.
I think you put my concern to rest with that one. I think the final question I have for you is on planning sheet 14, there's clarification that you're proposing to substitute one of the required deciduous trees for 14 shrubs. Can you just address the reason why and where those shrubs are going and where the tree would have been? Go on.
Yeah. Bryce Bradley, landscape architect with Redland. We were really struggling with trying to get the required amount of trees that the code has in place. So in order to meet the need, we try to get as many trees in there and putting in some smaller trees, ornamental trees, and then where we didn't want this to be so overgrown that as the trees matured, you would create an unhealthy situation for them. We felt that it was best to put the number of trees in to make it look good once the trees have matured, and then the shrubs allowed us to offset that.
Thank you. I've got questions for staff, but I'll hold those.
Thank you for coming back.
Absolutely.
Good to see you again. From what we saw this summer, this past July, when you were presenting both blocks 26 and 14 as a single submittal, is there anything that is changed on the block 26 portion of this presentation?
No.
So this is essentially identical to what we saw this past summer.
Correct.
Separated out from block 14.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. One of the exceptions that you are requesting tonight is with respect to setbacks. You are looking to increase the setbacks from Discovery Parkway. The PD sets a minimum of 2 feet and a maximum of 8 feet. You're asking for a 12.5-foot minimum and a 20-foot maximum. Can you please speak to that request?
So on the site plan, you can kind of see, it's highlighted here. You can see this very faint line right here. That's an actual utility easement that kind of takes a hard turn along this edge. So that is an 8-foot dry utility easement. Forgive me, I don't know the exact dimension of but it's a massive line that's in there. So it kind of doubles in the fact that we can bring these homes off of the street, end up working with the topography and taking this design opportunity to really integrate some really nice landscaping into this and terrace down to the street level, but then also stay away from that gigantic dry utility line that's in that location. So that kind of informs the depth of the lot and how the alley circulates from behind. You can see that it gives us a little bit more room. It kind of bisects this building, so we're required to have that additional setback there, but it's primarily the largest right here. We've actually, again, bumped these homes up slightly more to get them closer to that dimension, but it's a dual purpose. It's to creatively address the change in topography and grading, but also to kind of stay off of that large utility easement.
Okay. And maybe this is a question then for Bill to address. Obviously, the PD planned for certain setbacks in certain areas, and one of the ideas about a smaller setback is that in a more urban environment, you want to have the housing closer to the road, so you have the feeling of an urban environment. Can you speak to the requested exception? How does this fit in with the entire project? Are you supportive of it? Do you have any concerns about it? Why should we approve it?
Sure.
So the PD, I'll tell you, when it looked at all the setbacks in the general areas, it was looking at basically a two-dimensional site plan and kind of looking at zones of the town core and planning area 2, and then getting into larger setbacks into planning area 3. It did not consider the grade difference on this block especially. As you can see in the renderings, there's between I think a 4 to 8 foot grade separation between where the homes are going, which is basically necessary in order to come up the hill towards these lots. And part of that actually goes back to an old issue where the original grading plan for this corner actually had this entire area sunken down about 20 feet. When RC Superior graded the site, some of the trustees didn't like the difference in grade, and we actually came in and filled it back in to raise that corner up at the request of the board. That was 2 years ago. And that created this grading challenge of having more fall from this corner down to this street than was originally anticipated in the PD, which would have been flatter, but with a steeper hill at the south side. So the grade here, is necessary to span the difference between the finished floor of the homes and the street. The intent of I want to go to that rendering. Where is that? Behind this or behind it? So as you mentioned, the intent of the 2 to 8 foot setback is to promote a building wall at the street in an urban setting. Looking at this, I think this actually accomplishes much the same thing because it has that grade difference, and you have these grand sort of brownstone stairs that come down from the units and meet the public sidewalk. You end up with the same street wall feeling because of this terraced landscaping as you would have if that were the actual home going up right there. And I actually think it's a very attractive solution. As it relates to the overall plan, if you were going to do a larger setback anywhere, I think this is the best place to do it. This is the only place that we have this sort of Grand Boulevard treatment where we have an island in the middle of the road. This is designed for a little bit heavier traffic coming in off of Discovery Parkway and down into the project, and then stopping here and where traffic slows down and enters the real urban core as you go back up to the north. So for all those reasons, I'm definitely supportive. I don't think there is any better feasible way to develop this block, and I think it's a really attractive solution. We did spend quite a bit of time going back and forth with Thrive, looking at different options for how to treat this. One was to just have a shared sidewalk that was on the upper level, in which case you wouldn't have all these stairs. I think the individual stairs add value to the homes and add a really kind of upscale feeling to these homes, similar to a New York brownstone that you typically see with the private stoop coming down to the right of way. So I really like it.
Okay, thank you. I forgot my last question, so.
So I have a related question, and then we can go back to you, Mark. So with regard to the landscaping and the individual stairs, I saw in the plan is it correct that landscaping will be the individual homeowner's responsibility to maintain?
Correct, yes.
And has that been successful in the past? Okay.
Yes. Good question. So the actual lots themselves would all have their private landscaping out to the back of sidewalk. And then beyond the sidewalk, that's within the public right-of-way.
Of course.
So that would be a separate irrigation system. But yes, we have seen great success with that in the past, actually.
My concern, just looking at this plan, it looks like much more of a garden than I could maintain. So wanted to make sure your homeowners would be able to handle it.
Yeah, and just speaking to that, we've talked about this a little bit before, but the Metropolitan District does have covenant enforcement ability like an HOA typically would, where these homeowners will be required to maintain that front yard. And, anyone who buys this home knows that's part of their responsibility as a homeowner to maintain that yard. If they don't, the Metro District can ultimately come in and do it for them and charge them back. It can also impose fines. So there's no risk of this becoming, dilapidated or underused.
One thing that was not clear to me from that provision was how much latitude does the homeowner have to change the plants, change the design, change what's in that garden?
So anything that the homeowner wants to change after they buy the home, basically, and it's delivered to them, including paint colors or doors or landscaping, has to go through design review committee review at the Metro District, similar to how an HOA typically has a design review committee. The Metro District Board has a design review subcommittee. that accepts applications from homeowners. So if someone wants to change the plants out, they certainly can. It's helpful if they stick with the approved plant list that's part of the PD and part of the underlying zoning documents. But ultimately, they can apply for whatever change they'd like, and then the DRC can review it, and if it's appropriate.
But they would need to go through that approval process for any major changes to the garden.
That's right.
Great, thank you.
And in the staff memo, there's reference to a basement. Living space in this townhome product with an additional 500 square foot in basements. Not used to, given the topography challenge here, there's basements in these 500 square foot basements, and where, so this is below where's the basement in the home?
So the basement is oriented, you can see here on this image, this is representative of an actual egress window. So you'd have the window well coming up, and so that's for that center unit. And then this is for the side unit. So anytime that you have a side end unit, that's where that egress window would come out that meets the code requirement for the basement. So it's always going to be oriented towards the front of the home, and then the stairwells themselves are stacked. So there's a stair that goes up to the second floor, and then also a doorway and a stairwell that goes down to the 500 square foot basement.
And there's something that says, per the PD, floor allowances do not include basement space, so Thrive's product is within the 1,200 to 1,900 square foot allowance for urban villas. So, Stephen, this will be a question for you. You're out there somewhere. You don't have to, we're going to have a handful of questions, presumably, but if you could help us orient to where exactly in the PD the 500 square feet, if it is finished, right, would be excluded from the square foot allowance, or even if it's not finished. So I guess I'll have that question. Let's see what other questions I'll have. Bill, this may be a question for you. Similarly, in staff memo, there was a interesting sentence that we're using, but I can't remember where the source document from it. In addition to clarifying that 1,400 dwelling units may be constructed, the PD for downtown Superior also clarifies that 750 of these 1,400 are within planning area 2, and the other 650 are within planning area 3. We keep saying that, and I spent an hour looking for that, and I couldn't locate it. Where is that? What is the source? Non-intent. What is the source for that?
The only place that I've seen that, and I had the same search myself about a year ago. The only place I've seen it is in the example parking calculations on, I think it's page 2 of the PD. It's going through parking calculations and how they're calculated and how the different areas can potentially share parking, and it does say there's a potential 750 in planning area 2 and 650 in planning area 3. I don't know that should be interpreted to be a maximum. In any case, we're not going over 650 in planning area 3, so it's not a problem we need to talk about, but that's the only place I've seen it is on that parking table on, I think it's the second sheet of the PD.
Okay, thank you. And then maybe a question, Bill, don't go anywhere. A question for you, or maybe even Ryan. Also in the staff memo, staff was informed by RC Superior that their lender information will need to be updated to reflect 2 lenders. Can you address that, please?
Do you want to talk about it?
Oops, excuse me. Ryan Lefkowitz, Avanti Properties Group. That it was actually a type of sorts. There was an initial lender in there, which was Torrey Pines Bank. And what Avanti typically does is when we're in the acquisition of our deals, each one of our funds has a 3-year acquisition period. Until we build up the total portfolio, we tend to get financing for each individual asset. And then at the point in time that we have everything, we roll that into a portfolio loan. So what happened, I think we closed on it probably about July, August of last year. We closed the portfolio loan for this fund, and paid off Torrey Pines in that process. So I'd sent a comment back to staff as it related to those emails. There's going to be an adjustment in there. There's only one lender that'll be, there's only one lender encumbering the site right now with any sort of deed of trust or mortgage, and that's Wells Fargo, and going forward, that's the only one that will be on there.
Okay. I think those are my questions for now. Thank you.
Okay. Mark, do you have another? Ceiling heights. What are the ceiling heights?
So 10 foot on the first floor and 9 foot on the second floor. Basement, 9 feet. And just to address Trustee Ryan, as part of conventional real estate calculations and architectural square foot calculations, they don't typically count the basement, whether it's finished or not, towards the overall square footage of the home.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I'm familiar with that.
Okay, you knew that. Okay.
But the reference was not to...
It is to the PD, yeah, right.
It refers to the PD,
right.
and I couldn't find it, so I'm sure it's there. I just need somebody to point it out to me.
Cool, I just wanted to add that in.
Okay, other questions? All right.
We've got, should we do questions for staff now as well?
Or do we have an additional staff presentation? Or, okay. All right. Yeah, questions for staff would be appropriate.
Yeah, Stephen, I wouldn't mind you just walking through. We obviously have some replotting. I wouldn't mind you just giving a elevator pitch on why that was done.
The plat?
Yeah.
Sure. So the plat for this application really just accomplishes a couple of things, I guess, is that we're platting Central Park Circle, which gives access to Incline Lane, and it also creates two blocks. It creates block 27 and the block 26. They're not building this portion of block 26, and they're obviously not building anything in block 27. But whenever you have a public right-of-way that bisects two blocks, you get two different block numbers. So that's pretty straightforward. And then we're doing 19 lots, or Thrive is proposing 19 lots and 4 outlots. They have an outlot on each end. This is the largest of the kind of public green space outlots, and there's one centrally located, and then the other outlot is Incline Lane. So the plat really just accomplishes all of the access easements, public access easements to actually get into these lots, vehicular access and emergency access easement over Incline Lane, and then the utility easements that are necessary to develop these parcels. And then in kind of just following up on your question about the street trees, I think it was Trustee Lish. One of the other kind of constraints for this, and Jay mentioned it, but in terms of locating a street tree, you also got to deal with all the utilities, and all the water utilities or the wet utilities are within Discovery Parkway. We also have stairs going up to each individual unit. So that was part of also what influenced their need to not have all the trees because they're dealing with utility locations and stair locations as well. It's kind of tight along the front of this development. Anything else you need on the plat overview?
I have a question on that.
Okay.
Does the replat have any effect on the 25-foot no building setback or the buffer area?
No, the buffer, so the 25-foot no setback is on the north side of Tract H. Tract H is shown down here. So block 25 will still have a 25-foot setback or a no build area that'll get reflected on their FDPs. One of the things you may have noticed in the staff memo is that we're requiring that this, I didn't like how this reflected on here. They did it because of scale, but it doesn't show these boundaries that goes all the way to the end. So when you scale this out, it doesn't give you a full lot depth. This measures out at closer to 30 feet, and it's a 77-foot lot depth that'll be on the south side of Central Park Circle. So these lots on block 27 will be 77 feet deep. And it doesn't reflect that way on this plat. So it makes it look like it's closer to Tract H than it actually is. And because that area is such a hot button, this will get updated before we record it.
So just for clarification, so the proposed super lot 4A Discovery Office Park / Superior Town Center replat number 3, the representation of block 27, that section of land is not to scale.
It's not to scale right now.
And
Yep.
does not accurately reflect the difference between Tract H, the no building setback, and the actual expanse of Block 27.
That's correct. Yep.
And
But
so
it will, so.
It will as it
As a
gets
condition,
recorded?
yeah, before we get it recorded.
Stephen, can you speak to when the board is expected to see the FDP for the remainder of Block 26?
I just finished compiling comments and giving those back to the applicant on our first initial review for Block 26 and 27, Remington's proposal. So it's kind of the ball's in their court. When they resubmit, we'll review again, see how they responded to our comments, and then. But I think we're hoping for early second quarter, late first quarter of this year. So.
Okay.
I know they are. So.
I know there was a condition that you added that stated, I believe it was occupancy permits wouldn't be issued until the rest of the FDP was approved. Do you have any concerns with approving part of a block, kind of in a piecemeal fashion?
So
this manner?
We're working with them still, just because I think that they were hoping to have different feedback from us this week in terms of what might need to change for the Remington application. But the latest discussion is they may break that off and come in with an FDP that builds these sections of the road in order to avoid that. So that, but we're certainly aware, and they want to have this roadway in place and asphalt laid. But the access is actually there because we're platting Central Park Circle. So they'll have it, and they'll provide some sort of construction surface in order to get out there, because they're going to want to do all their staging from the back rather than off of Discovery Parkway. But for anyone to actually buy a home and occupy a home, this needs to be built to an approved FDP standard, even if it's just a section, in order to get them to incline lane. So that's what that condition's for.
So even if everything falls off of that, we'll still need to see an FDP
Correct.
that just has those two little pieces.
Yeah, in order for Thrive to get their COs, yep.
But, I'm sorry, the COs could presumably come much further down the line, a couple of years, once construction is complete.
Right, yeah, construction takes a while. So I'm not too concerned about it, this piece getting caught up to the COs.
Did someone want to add to that piece? I've got another question, but.
Go ahead.
Okay. I know in some of our prior FDPs, we've seen open space requirements listed and needing to keep certain amounts of the blocks open or lots in other parts of town. Is any of that applicable here?
They don't have a certain open space requirement. I mean, like, they don't have a specific one. We push for it, and certainly the design guidelines suggest that every block has to have some amount of public amenity, but it's nebulous. It's not like you have to have a certain percentage for every development. And really the town center as a whole was designed to have, specific park and open space elements throughout that were more of the big public amenities. But we do try to get a certain amount, and they provided most of that in the outlot in the southeast corner. So,
I mean, probably a tough question, but just looking at a percentage of what is there compared to percentage of what we have on other blocks, roughly comparable?
I would say no, but it's not that. I mean, just because you look at Block 25 had a huge, and it's not a buildable area because of the topography. We had a bigger courtyard, so it might be comparable to Block 13 because of the amount of units that we have out there, 117 versus 19 here. That one might be more comparable, but it's certainly not comparable to Block 25, which you guys just saw.
Okay, that's all for now.
I just have one request on the plat, and this is just on a going forward basis, and I recognize that this is going to get corrected before it gets actually recorded. We have members of the public here, and people are obviously concerned about the buffer, the 25-foot, the no building setback. I think it's important, if we're going to be including plats, proposed plats in our packets in a public hearing and a quasi-judicial hearing, that they be accurate, and that when the public is actually reading them, that they appear to be what is actually being developed. And if they're not, that too should be specifically called out. Because I think here, if you just look at it, it looks like Tract H is really close to that road, And I can understand why, people would be curious as to how exactly you would fit a house in that narrow space. So I think just
I
as a
completely
best
agree.
practice going forward,
Yep.
when you're reviewing these preliminary FDPs and replats, and I imagine you're going to be doing this with the Toll Brothers application, keep this in mind, that we don't see a plat that is not actually representative of what it looks like on the ground, because I think you're going to cause public concern when hopefully we can avoid it from the outset.
I understand. Thank you.
And in terms of getting this corrected, is that a condition, or are we covering that under red line corrections?
You can make it a condition if you want. I list it as a technical correction. So.
Okay. I think we ought to probably make that a specific condition.
That's fine.
Yeah. And Kendra, do you have a thought on that?
I think it's covered in the technical, but if we want to call it out, that's fine as well.
Okay.
It's fine.
All right, let's call it
I'll try
out.
to draft something in
Okay, thanks.
the next few minutes and give it to you.
Question around outlot C. So you said there were 4 outlots. I'm looking at a visual that really shows 3 that are, there's one on each end, and then there's the kind of biggish one in the middle. Is there a 4th one that I've missed somewhere?
Incline Lane's also platted as an outlot, so it's not a public street. It's a privately owned and maintained. But that's how all the quote unquote alleyways have been done. Yep.
I forgot. I'm a novice. Outlot C, the one in the middle. That has stairs. Correct?
Yeah. It's more clear on the FDP sheets, but it will have stairs just like all the other units to get down to Discovery.
So the handicap access for anybody, any guest, will be dependent upon the garage access, and then to get to Discovery Parkway, we'll have to go one way down Incline Lane and catch up with the sidewalk. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay. Would now be a good time to run through that 3D model? Do you still want to look at the 3D
Sure, I
model?
can pull up the
Yeah,
PD if
Stephen,
you
while you're
want to
there,
answer
can
that
you
one.
can you remind me, the question I asked, do you want me to re-ask the question?
I remember it. I just got to grab it because I didn't have it up already. I should have. So this is the PD4, same as PD3 in terms of this
Yeah, yeah.
requirement. So I guess to begin, you had a question on,
It was per the PD, floor allowances do not include basement space.
right, you had that one and then you had this one on the, how many units are in each. So this one shows what's allowed for planning area 3. And it says that 650 residential count. And
Okay,
up here
thank
for
you.
planning area 2, it shows the 750. So that's that second part of your question
Okay.
about the PD. But then the allowance, it's on this sheet here. Sorry, I just skipped it. So there's a note on the bottom of their typology description that clarifies. I got to. So all unit sizes provided do not include basement square footage if applicable. So the intent of that note is
Surprised I
to,
didn't see that.
it just clarifies that this is all above grade floor area. So,
Great, thank you.
Sure.
One last question.
Sure.
Before you go into the view plane. With respect to the design guidelines, does staff have an opinion about this application and whether or not it is consistent with the design guidelines for the town center?
Other than the setback? I feel like it is. I mean, the landscaping requirements are always a little bit modified in terms of, shade, and I think that's part of the thing that maybe the original set of landscape criteria or species list didn't really consider with the tight spaces that sometimes result. But otherwise, I mean, I agree with Bill, and I think that, off of Discovery, these units are going to actually benefit from being elevated from the street a little bit more, because that's a busier street. And then if you look at where Village Green will tee into it, you're not going to have headlights hitting windows. You're going to have that kind of on that. Those will hit the landscape tier, and these are going to be elevated, 6 to 8 feet above that. So due to the busyness of the street, I don't have any issue with the setback request either. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. On to the 3D model?
Yes.
Okay. This is Evan Lanning from MIG. He'll run you through it, and I'll toggle us over to that other. Oh, sorry. Evening. So there was a request for the view plane, and then there was a request for, did it not? Second story view across the street, is that correct? From block 26 looking northeast?
And toggling the fourth story on for the Remington space, if you can.
Evan, Chase doesn't have these technical issues when he presents.
There we go. All right. He's never going to pinch it again. Okay. So get you situated here. Sorry, that request was to fly. To toggle on the view plane first so they can see it, and then maybe go down underneath it so they can see the difference. So I can start kind of where the view plane begins, and then goes up by that 4% that requirement there. Kind of slip underneath slowly. Okay. So it's kind of coming across there. Turn around, looking back. Further north on Discovery, and then so go towards the homes from there, sorry, and then take a my end. There it is. Okay. So go towards the townhomes that we're looking at, and then they want to see the view looking northeast, so you don't have to turn around in the opposite direction. I see. And those are all at the 4-story on block 25. Yeah, I can toggle that change there. So that's that 4-story right here.
Now we're a little drone above them.
Slowly
And that's before.
you spin that around a little bit? Other way, other way, other way, other way. Yeah. What's the, I mean, you would think with that much more elevation? Why not? Yeah, more. You would think with elevation, you wouldn't be looking right at that four-story wall there, but I guess. Yeah, yeah.
Is there anywhere else to fly to? I can kind of go along the road here.
Can you go up that middle outlot, please? Back up and go, or down the outlot, either way. The width of this outlot is
the width of...
Does anybody remember the width of the outlot approximately?
I can pull it up on the plat, but my recollection is
21 feet.
Yeah, it's about 20 feet plus 6-foot setback on each side, so it's about 30 feet of building separation. But part of it's on private lots.
Okay. And can you go through just so we can get the visual of the stairs and the...
Can we change the time of day to get rid of that shadow a little bit?
What time of day?
Anything that gets rid of the shadow? Oh, other way, maybe? Oh, never mind. Guess we can't get rid of it.
Change the time of year.
Yeah.
Your birthday or something like that?
No, I was just having a hard time seeing the stairs. Trying to get better context. Yeah. For context purposes, is it possible to have an idea of what's envisioned for the rest of Block 26?
It's not in the model, no.
Well, yeah, not in the model, but just, yeah.
I can certainly speak to it if you'd like. So we don't have a plan, but the rest of Block 26 is really this triangle that we're looking at. I don't have a mouse, but that triangle behind there. You can see it on the plat. That's envisioned for, I think it's roughly seven single-family detached, two-story, very traditional two-story homes that front the street, and then that's actually their backyard. The grading in this model is a little funky. That's not actually what it would be, or that might be grading the actual building foundations or something, but that'll be backyards and green space up against that alley. And then Block 27 on the other side to the left of Central Park Circle there is the same product, two-story detached, roughly 50-foot wide by 70-foot deep lots. So it's going to be the lowest density product in the entire project.
So I guess my concern was there's really no reason for the rest of the residents that'll be on Block 26 to use incline lane at all because they don't have any access points.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some parking on it, so you could have guest parking
right
in one of those spaces there, and then walk around the front. But no, there won't be any access points back there. Potentially rear gates on backyard fences, but probably not even that.
Thank you.
Before we leave the 3D version, I just thought of something. Can you go to the front of the submission? I want to understand the egress windows from the basements, since I'm having a tough time orienting myself in terms of how that looks from the street.
I believe that would be one of them there. And And the others were mentioned to be.
Yeah, I mean, the side ones I'm not worried about. It's because those actually are okay. But with the slope that we're talking about, it's just going to be sort of like right there.
Yeah, so the window that was dashed in is actually in a light well behind all the berms, so you won't ever see it from the street.
Okay.
There's
I gotcha.
There's a hole.
Perfect. No, I got you. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Okay. So from the street, you really won't even know that there's a window well there. Got it. Okay.
I'm sorry, at this time, we'll do public comment for this item. If anyone would like to make public comment, just give a little wave. I'll signal you to come up. If you'd start with your name and address and then limit your comments to 5 minutes or less, please. All right, public comment now open.
Well, I'm closest. So Sonia Critton, 685 East Wigan Street. We have a number of neighbors who are very concerned about the fact that it looks like you're putting a road through the buffer zone and what you have posted on your website. And I know that your websites are not always accurate. I spoke to Martin, and one of the things that was posted was 2 years old and not accurate. But I think this is what we've printed, and it's causing the neighbors quite a bit of concern. But we don't want to see any roads or anything other than a backyard going through the buffer zone. I've reiterated this multiple times. Everybody feels very strongly about this. The buffer zone is 250 feet. We had somebody who wore the green shirt of the developer to all the meetings and signed off on something that should not have been signed off on. Because of that, for some odd reason, we gave 25 feet to the developer. That should not have happened. But we were assured that nothing would go in that additional 25 feet other than perhaps a backyard. And I have asked, and many people have asked, that they go into public comment. It was negotiated. I think that there is somebody here who should recuse themselves from any other discussion about this, because you should not wear the green shirt of the developer and then make these decisions. No road can go in there, period. And this is absolutely egregious, and we'll end up with another lawsuit, and I want to avoid that. No law, and then when you show these things, honestly, it's such a waste of time. When you're talking about the view of Long's Peak, which is in our height restrictions, that is not from sitting on top of our rooftop. That is not from being in an airplane 1,000 feet above our houses. The view corridor is from our yard in our backyard looking out at Long's Peak. That's what the agreement stated, period. Not sitting up on top of the rooftop. So these things that you guys keep sending us and showing us are so insulting. We have a legal agreement. And just because somebody has in the past made the mistake of not reading it or not knowing how to read a topo map, we are not a third party to this. We are the first party. Just as if, as citizens, we are asking you to enforce speed limits, right? We're not a third party. We have regulations and laws. You guys cannot keep doing this. So I have wonderful neighbors who would like to speak. I've made my peace a few times with you guys. You know what it's height restrictions, not from 1,000 feet above our houses. Height restrictions for our yards. That's what's in there. And then no roads through the buffer zone. Come on, guys. This is silly. And I feel bad for these developers that they're even led to believe that they could get away with this again. I feel really bad for them. I think it's a waste of their time and their money, and you guys should set them straight so they're not wasting their money. Okay, thank you.
Okay, additional public comment?
I'm sorry, trying to. No, it's okay. Go ahead. Teresa Clark, Superior resident. I just have and thank you for letting me speak at the beginning and at this time as well. I have a couple of questions specific to the Thrive presentation that I'd like to understand. And that one of them is with the berming that was required to make space for the basements. I noticed on some of the photos of the renderings, that's upwards of 16 steps to get, at least for what I was counting without my reading glasses from the third row. But it's 16 steps to get up to the front door of that. And because they want the garages in the basement, I was wondering if they had given any, and the people that are looking out of the front of their houses are kind of looking onto the cliffs of the 4 stories that are across the street. And I was just wondering if they had given any consideration to just doing exactly what they have here, but turning it around 180 degrees. Because that way, the new residents would get a nicer view of single-family houses out there front, and the garages could go in the bermed areas where there's 16 steps for people to get, for their guests to get up to see them. So that's just the only thing I wonder if they had considered. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Additional public comment?
My name is China Leonard. I live at 547 South Brandon Court, which is in the Waterford section and looks right down at the back of these houses. And I would like to reiterate that there's been so much attention paid to the railings of the front of the houses and the windows and all of this sort of thing. But the back of them is one row of garage doors. And maybe I missed something. I didn't hear everything. I don't know what's going in that sort of triangular space behind the buildings. And maybe there's something else that will conceal them. But right now, as it stands, I think the idea of having just the whole back of this 19 family unit complex be just this row of garage doors is not very impressive.
Okay. Additional public comment?
Hello, David Taylor, 725 East Wiggins. So I have a general comment. I've given this comment, I don't know, maybe 15 times. Some of you were here before, some of you here weren't here before. There was a lot of work that went into this before, from the trustees, the staff, the community, the developer. There was a hell of a lot of work there, and there were a lot of issues. So I'd like you guys not to abrogate all the agreements that were made. Like putting a road, I can't tell now if the road's in the buffer. Is the road in the buffer? Does anybody know? Is the road in the buffer? I mean, I don't think that's a scale problem, if I understand how life works. Either if the scale's in the buffer or it's not. So there was a lot of effort that went into that. So for you guys to just ignore that, I don't think is a good thing. Because a lot of trust was put into that, and a lot of effort and energy was put into that. And the corridor too, the site corridor, big deal. But that buffer, there was a lot of energy, a lot of opportunity costs spent on that buffer. So I'd like you to honor that. Thanks.
Thanks. Additional public comment?
Elizabeth Sorelli, 987 Carvel. I have a question as to the maps I've been working on that are from the original website. I'm not sure how far back they are. And when we're talking, somebody, created a map that gave us an overview of the whole town center section. And if we're working on some of the blocks and they've been kept in there, we can tell when we get new maps in here what's being constructed in there. But as they're saying, this down here, which is lot 26, there's block 26, lot 1, 2, 2, which pieces, this is now, I cannot find a map any place on the website where there's a map that shows an overview of this whole section as they're talking about, or any across the southern section, that we would know where the road goes, et cetera. And who was responsible for this originally? Is it each individual builder, et cetera, so that we even know, we have a proper view of these blocks, and especially when they get changed, new roads are added, et cetera, that interconnect. Is that a question I can ask, or?
Yeah, we will follow up with staff. Once public comment's completed, we'll follow up with staff and have them respond on that, but thank you for the question. Additional public comment?
My name is Jerry, nicknamed Bear Owen, and I own the house at 1027 East Carville Place, which my late bride and I lived in for 20 years. It's now a rental. For over 20 years, we've been fighting this issue of the road, and our understanding parallels what's already been said here, so I won't repeat that. But maybe I'm the only one that's not missing the irony of this, but the blockage of the street down off of 88th there, starts with a W. What's the street? Weldona. The irony to me is that the city's blocking off the Weldona gateway to the northeast corner of Rock Creek. And now you're still persisting, in, as I understand it, in building a road that's the same kind of shortcut as Weldona was to the northern edge of Rock Creek. Now you're going to build a road that's going to be a shortcut through the buffer area, which will attract a lot of traffic. And that it's the exact same thing that you're trying to stop with the Weldona blockage. I mean, I find that an incredibly ironic fact. So I would invite the trustees to think about that and what it says about favoring development on the undeveloped parts north of the buffer zone behind our homes, and building another problem that you're going to have to deal with later, because it's going to attract a lot of traffic for people to cut the corner to get down to the commercial areas of Superior, which then there will be demands for widening that, then traffic calming, the whole ball of wax that comes with that kind of a development of a road system that doesn't need to be there. Thank you.
Additional public comment? Any additional public comment? Okay, you spoke, Wine spoke.
I'd like to make a second comment regarding the same area where the road seems to be going through the buffer zone. I've lived in Rock Creek for over 25 years and was actually involved with Rita and others in working on the original annexation agreement. And since this issue has arisen recently, I went back and looked at the PDs for the last several years, and there has always been a drawing that there is a road that's going to connect with something. Now, the original annexation agreement said that there was no obligation for the town to do this, but it was expected that someday this would happen. As time went on, the road was drawn closer and closer to the buffer zone. But again, none of these things were drawn to scale. So it was not really certain that that was what whoever drew the diagrams had in mind. But since 2013, 2000 PDF changes, 2, 3, and 4, it's become very clear that those roads are crossing through the 25-foot setback and into the buffer zone. Originally, they extended out and did not turn next to the buffer zone behind the line of houses. But since 2014, they have been within the buffer zone, definitely behind the line of houses. So again, it just seems as though I'm hoping that this is kind of an oversight, because most of the attention has not been in Area 3. It's been in Area 1 and 2, and Area 3 has been sort of off to the side. But now, as the new area, I don't remember what it's called, to the east is being developed, that road is going to be more and more of interest. And so I hope that the restrictions in the buffer zone and the 25-foot setback will be honored. Now, one thing that when I look at these maps, I see that there's a drainage area. There's been a pond there for years. It's kind of dried up now, but it seems like Superior, I've seen the two ponds behind our house just to the south of, Discovery Park disappear. And then when Rock Creek was basically rerouted and all the trees knocked down and everything reconfigured, it seems like maybe that pond isn't such a deterrent as it might have been. But I think all of us feel that several of the people that have bought houses recently have said that they looked at the old agreement or whatever was given to them, and they knew that development was going on, but they felt that they had protection because of what was stated in the documents that they were given. So I hope that we don't continue to just give everything to the developers that they want. I hope that some of the agreements that were made for the citizens that have lived here for a long time will be honored. Thank you.
Thanks. Additional public comment? Any additional public comment?
Joe Sorelli, East Carville Place. Just one little additional point about the road that we've just been talking about that does cut in and go through the buffer zone. That little cut in was designed as the only way to have a potential connection that didn't, because there was that pond that was there before and there didn't seem to be enough room to go around it. Well, that pond is gone. The road can be reconfigured. If there's a desire to go down through to 88th Street or to Indiana through on that route, it can be routed outside the buffer zone very easily without having to deal with the pond issue. So please consider that too.
Good, thanks. Any additional public comment? All right, at this time, public comments closed. We will have any follow-up questions from the board. I know we had one question that was raised. Stephen, if you wanted to address that, the updating of the maps and how frequently that's done, or what the procedure is for that.
Sills, can you toggle it back over to? Hopefully. Oh, did it go to sleep? It's odd. I'll try to answer it, I guess, in general. The road for, the only road being platted through this application is Central Park Circle. So there's a different road that's discussed as far as the connection between Coal Creek and the town center, but the only road being platted through this application is Central Park Circle, and that was contemplated through the PD3 amendment. So you'll see in the maps for PD3 and PD4 that streets 9 and 10, that's what they were labeled before we had a name for it, were contemplated in the PD. In terms of I don't know what old or.
Yeah, I think Ms. Sorelli's question was, when are the different maps updated on the website?
So
maybe some of
that's kind of a question about, I mean, our practice is we have a lot of the old applications up. So if you want to go and look and see what got approved through PD3, you can go find it. We have a PD4 now. You can see the difference between the two. So we're going to have some areas that are potentially outdated, but you're also going to have information that I think is important for the public to understand and for applicants or developers to understand too. So the mandate, I guess, has been, get these up, transparency and getting these applications out there and have them available to everybody. I know that it's not always as easy to find. We don't always have as much time to continue to update our website in order to facilitate these things. But it is on there, and the roads that are associated with this proposal are even reflected here on this document. So that's Street 9 and 10. Because of the connectivity with Central Park Way, the direction was to name this Central Park Circle because it basically tees in here and then it loops back up. So.
Okay.
And there's a link on the town's website in the planning department to approved development applications.
Correct.
And if you click on that link, then you can find all of the applicable, and there's actually a sub link for the town center development. Yep. And within that link, you can then click on PD1, PD2, PD3, PD4. Right?
Correct. Yeah, there's often those bigger documents are broken up into several different sheets so that you can actually open them without it taking forever. But that's, yeah.
Mayor, I think part of the confusion is what you see here. This is how it's shown on PD Amendment number 3. On the east edge of the property, you see Promenade Drive there, and it looks like it's in Tract H, correct? I would say that future applications that come forward for that area, I expect that road to be north of that, of where it's shown here, and outside of any Tract H.
Okay.
So I know this is outside the town's purview, but Mr. Jenks, not a condition of approval, but just might like to suggest on the Superior Town Center website that you have the public website, it might be great to put a map similar to this of at least what's already been approved. Recognize you may not want to put what's coming before the board, but that might be a nice thing to put out there for the public.
Yeah, certainly. We noted, and I can certainly add the PD as it stands today to the website. I'd also, I completely appreciate all the neighbors' concern. I would be concerned too with construction of this scale next to my house. So I want to let you know that I completely understand. There's nothing that we're planning on doing that's not in line with all of the PDs that have been approved to date. We have no plans to build in the 25-foot setback no build zone. We have no plans for a road in the buffer or in the setback zone aside from the promenade crossing here where it's been shown. And also, there seems to be a lot of confusion about where this has come from. I'm happy to come meet with you as a group. If you want to do that, we can set up a meeting and go through the past approvals. And, I'd like to clarify because there's clearly some contention here and there's no intent for that, so.
Maybe you can clarify the garage door issue.
I'm sorry, we can't have any comments from the back.
Thank you very much.
So question for Thrive then to one of the public comments. Was there consideration of flipping the design 180 degrees so the garage doors aren't necessarily facing the way they are now and they'd be facing Promenade instead?
Yes, that's a good question, and we did evaluate all different types of configuration with the site planning and design of this particular block. The way that it works out on the screen here, what it's my understanding is a forthcoming application are single-family homes that are front-loaded, so they would actually have garages that front onto the street, and then are served from these streets 9 and 10. So rather than kind of orient them facing towards the backs of homes, we took the opportunity to actually fit within the design guidelines and sort of embrace Discovery Parkway and engage into the street and have those, it's a pretty successful urban design technique for new urbanism to have homes fronting onto the street, front porches on the street, alley-loaded rear access for the vehicular circulation that keeps that away from that public domain. And then ultimately, what I think is successful with the future design that's going to be proposed to the south of our block and across the street is an additional buffer to what will be those garages. So you'll have 2 rows of homes in certain locations as buffer to the garage, the rears of the homes. And then again, we very intentionally located landscape tracks in locations that would provide additional buffer to the rears.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions before we close the public hearing?
Actually, one more question. Stephen, can you just confirm that the view plane that we saw on the simulation reflects what is in the downtown Superior governing document? So it was not 1,000 feet up, but it was...
It's accurate. That's a question that we always have for Chase, but Chase has said it's OCD accurate, was his quote from last week, so.
Excellent.
I just have one question for Kendra before we close the public hearing. If you've had the opportunity to prepare the condition,
Sure. Do you want me to read it too?
could you please?
And this is obviously up for your discussion. Here's what I've drafted. Within 60 days of the date of this resolution, the applicant shall modify the final plat to accurately portray distances between the boundary of the property, with capital P, and tract H, and the width of the intervening property in block 27.
Okay. All right. Anything further before we close the public hearing? Once we close the public hearing, we will not have any more questions or discussion with staff or developer. We'll just have discussion, deliberation here at the dais. All right. Anything further? All right. Public hearing's closed. Discussion.
I'll go first. So thank you, Thrive, for coming back. This board previously heard a presentation on this same proposal this past summer. That board at that time had no issue with the proposal on this particular block. We had an issue with block 14, but not with block 26. As a result, that application has been bisected essentially, and we're just dealing with the previous proposal solely as to block 26. In my opinion, the design guidelines we heard from staff, there's nothing other than the variance with respect to the setbacks. It's in compliance with the design guidelines, but we heard testimony about the setbacks are what was originally contemplated in the PD, and I think Bill Jenks stated pretty clearly that the PD was planned in a two-dimensional area, and that the topography of this site with the staircases now has been, it necessitates the variance request, and I think generally speaking, the hillside makes it impractical to build appropriately without these staircases. Frankly, I think that this is an improvement in the design, and we as a quasi-judicial body, as we're interpreting the facts to the law, we have the discretion to approve an application if we think that it reflects an improvement in the design over what the PD allows for. Originally, when we saw this presentation, I think we were looking at a 3-story unit, and then Thrive had then modified it down to a 2-story unit. At that point in time, we were looking at 8-foot ceilings, and there was concern from the board that this was really trying to squash in too much home into a 32-foot height limitation. As a result, Thrive listened to the board. They came back to the board with a completely new design. It's a very attractive design. It's a design that is consistent with the design guidelines. We're respecting the view shed. We're respecting the height limitations on in the PD. And we're getting a builder here that is a sustainable builder, that is environmentally friendly, that's going to be putting solar on the roofs. This is the type of builder that we should want to encourage to locate and invest in Superior and to build here. I think that this is going to add a much needed diversity to the housing stock in the town center. I think it's very attractive. I think that the way Discovery Parkway is going to look with the median island and the setbacks, it's going to be a very, very attractive street. So I think that the variance for the setbacks makes sense. We're within the height limitations, and I'm going to vote yes, and I recommend everybody does the same.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Who'd like to go next? Neil?
I'm going to try to avoid repeating a lot of what Mark just said, and I want to appreciate Thrive for coming in. This, and I don't have that benefit of having been on the previous board for the previous discussion, so coming at this, new. And from everything I've seen, this is a tough area to build. The grade is weird, and it slopes in the opposite direction of where you'd want it to if you're building a home. And I appreciate everything that Thrive has sort of done with respect to working within the area. Their focus on reducing the environmental footprint is admirable. I think building the homes with solar at the front end is an admirable idea. It's fantastic. I retrofitted my home with solar panels, and it's never quite the same because your converter is never where you want it, and it's like in the way of everything. With the one exception of the setback, as Trustee Lasis already alluded to, my feeling is that Thrive has actually met all the requirements that relate to the PD. I view that their setback proposal is a better decision for the space based on the realities of the ground and the utility corridor. All that said, I am going to support the project or the applicant. I do have a couple of concerns. I'm still concerned a little bit about the height difference between block 25 and 26. I think the 3D rendering helped to alleviate some of that. The trees that are going to grow in on Discovery Drive in the median, I think are really going to help alleviate some of that issue. Of course, it's going to take some time for those trees to grow in, but I think it's really going to help. I'm also a little concerned that we don't have a true concept for the south side of lot 26. I think I understand, with respect to the 7 homes that are going to come in there, that's going to help with that long line of garage doors. It would have been great to have viewed it all at once, but I understand, we are where we are. Overall, I think the Thrive application is fantastic. I think it's a good use of the space, and I will support it as well.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Ken?
I too will thank Thrive for coming back. I appreciate the core values that you've laid out for us. I fully agree that you're the type of builder that we want to encourage to come and be part of our town. I will say I am a little bit disappointed that we don't see the solar panels being included in the FDP. I hear the commitment, and I hope that follows through. I too share the concern with what we've already approved on block 25, looking at the potential 4-story wall right next to a 2-story building that we're looking at today, but that ship has sailed. Listening to all of our public here tonight, I'd like to thank all of you for coming and being engaged as well. The biggest concerns that I heard this evening related to ensuring that the buffer area isn't being infringed upon and that we're not losing the view corridor. In this FDP, as we've seen, the buffer area is not being infringed upon. I encourage everybody to continue to be engaged and come to our future FDPs to make sure you share your thoughts with us. But I don't believe we're running into any errors or issues in this particular submittal. And I believe that once we ultimately get the fill in on the rest of block 26 and block 27, that we're not going to have a wall of garages that you're going to be staring at either. So hopefully in the end, we're looking at a quality product that can hopefully work for everybody. Ultimately, I will also vote yes on this project.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Laura?
So I won't repeat. My opinions almost exactly mirror what Trustee Lish said. I am concerned about the height difference. I think going from that 2-story to the 4-story, I thought the grade would offset that a little bit more. I'm also just a little bit concerned about the rest of block 26, their desirability as single family homes, given that they will be looking out onto the garages of those townhomes. So very curious to see what that design looks like. I would encourage you to really take the aesthetics into account when you bring that proposal to us. That said, I am just so thrilled that Thrive has come back. I was very concerned last year when the board rejected the proposal, but I think that this new product that you've brought to us with the higher ceilings is much more desirable, and definitely support it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Laura. Kevin?
I don't have to take a red-eye flight very often. I travel for work, but when Thrive is here, I take a red-eye. So please don't come back. I'm kidding. No, I'm really glad you came back. I'm just starting to dread a flight in a couple hours. A couple things. First, the fact that the exception is around the setback really doesn't concern me at all, right? I mean, I think that I remember 6-7 years ago sitting on the other side when we had talked about a minimum setback, and then we put a maximum setback, which I thought was odd. And I think even trustees at the time were commenting on they didn't really care about exceeding the maximum setback. And so the fact that we're facing an exception on exceeding a maximum setback doesn't really seem like a bad thing to me. It almost feels like a good thing. I really do appreciate all the public comment that we received tonight. With regard to there was one comment around, did we think about flipping it 180 and putting, it probably would have been easier for you to design, but I think the aesthetic in the downtown core would not have been the same. And frankly, in our planning guidelines, we did say the front doors need to orient to the street. So this really does look like a core to me. So I'm really grateful that you guys did come back, and I think the property itself looks great and has my support.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. I also appreciate Thrive coming back. I'm pleased that we're going to be able to deliver a different result than we did a couple of months ago, so I appreciate that. And I'm also satisfied with the variance request for the setbacks. I think that's reasonable given the site, and appreciate you listening to the design concerns with regards to ceiling heights. I think this is going to be a really nice product, and like what you've done with it, so I'll be supporting it. And with that, I will
I'll make a motion.
Entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution Number R-11.
Yes.
Series 2019, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a major final subdivision plat and final development plan for Lot 1, Block 14, and a portion of Lot 1, Block 26, Superior Town Center, and the associated subdivision improvement agreement, case numbers FP 2018-3, FP 2018-4, and FDP 2018-3, with the condition previously read by council with respect to the modifications of the plat to accurately reflect the scale of Tract H.
Okay. Thanks. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Leysa, second by Trustee Ryan. All those in favor? All right, passes unanimous. All right, thank you all very much. Anything further before we adjourn? All right, we're adjourned.